good evening, everyone. A little bit about me. So I, as with Judith, I am not one of the scientists here. I don't come to you with brain research, but I have always had a fascination with the brain, the way that we think, the way we make decisions, brain health. As Valerie mentioned, I've been on the board of directors of the Ontario Brain Institute for close to 3 years now. I'm currently vice chair of the board, and I find it immensely rewarding to be able to be involved in the Brain Institute. In terms of my background, I'd always had an interest in science as well, and it's interesting, Pooja, when you talked about building the furniture for the dollhouse. My specialty was taking apart various pieces of machinery in our house and putting it back together again. Grew up in a family of medical doctors, hence again that interest in health and healthcare, and my undergraduate degree is in biology. So somehow, despite all of that background, I ended up in business. Many changes over my career. And what I'd like to talk about today is something that we talk a lot about in business. And I'm going to have to disagree with Pooja on some of her statements, but we'll be civil about it. So what I'm going to speak about is talent and gender parity. Now, when I'm saying gender, now I'm not sure if I should be saying gender or sex because I got so confused by Jillian. But I'm going to stick with gender because that's what I know. And in my business, so I'm in financial services, specifically asset management, and our business is all about people and intellectual capital. So we talk a lot about talent and about getting the best people, about developing people, about promoting the best people, and increasingly about unconscious bias and about being agnostic in terms of gender and agnostic in terms of ethnicity. To draw an analogy, if you were, since we're here in Canada, people will get the hockey analogy. If you're building the best hockey team, you're not going to put all defensemen on the team, right? So you need those different skill sets and the different styles. One thing, and I've participated in a number of discussions around gender parity over the years, and indeed over the past week in the lead up to International Women's Day. And some of the things that we've talked about, and this is around unconscious bias and slowing down our decision making. So this is where each of us naturally, if we were asked to make a snap decision on who would you recommend for that job, what do you think? I need to get someone on the board. Can you give me a couple of names? If we immediately reach into our mental archives and pull out a couple of names, those names are not going to be reflective of a broad set of skills and backgrounds, because each of us has our network of people. Oftentimes they look a lot like we do, and when we reach into our memories quickly, we'll come out with some names quickly, and they're likely not going to be the most thoughtful slate, if you will. So one senior executive that I know has a technique that she uses whenever someone asks her for a name on a project, or they're talking through promotions or what have you, is she refuses to answer right away. And that forces her to go away and think and take at least 24 hours to come up with a list and make sure that she's checking her own biases, right? Because equally, I'm going to come up with a set of names that's going to look very different from others. So I think that's a good technique to apply. And where I'm going to disagree with Pooja is around the notion of quotas. I don't believe in quotas for quota's sake, but I do believe in ensuring that we're thoughtful enough in terms of the slate of people that we put forward. And if a pipeline is, say, 20%, well, since we're talking about women, but we're talking about 10 positions and we've got 10,000 applicants, I would challenge you to say that you couldn't come up with a slate of people to interview for that position that would be representative 50-50 men, women, because you've got enough people in the pipeline. Where it can be a challenge is if you don't have the pipeline well developed enough, then you can get those really big mismatches. So that's the entry point. And the second piece that I'd like to chat about is in terms of the discussions that we've had on advice for women in the workplace. So I'm often asked, what kind of advice would you have for young people and young women in the workplace in order to be successful? And obviously, my advice is going to be slanted towards the large organization because that's been the dominant environment in which I've worked throughout my career. There are three themes that come up repeatedly. And I would say these are valuable for both men and women, but men and women approach them differently. And so I place particular emphasis on them when I'm speaking with women. The first, so the three are around self-promotion, building a strong and broad network and leveraging that network, and the notion of sponsorship and mentorship. So I'll start with self-promotion, and this won't be surprising to many of you, and obviously these are, I don't want to use stereotypes, these are sort of broad brush statements, but you would have seen this often. So very oftentimes women can be reluctant to promote themselves. So take an example, you'll see a job posting, and it'll list, these job postings. I mean, who are they made for anyway? It sounds like, they've got this listing of qualifications. I don't think anyone actually looks that great and has all of those elements. And yet, typically what we see is that women will go through the 10 categories and they'll have 8 of 10 and they'll think, well, no, I really don't have that particular element, so, I'm not gonna put my name forward. And this isn't always the case, but we often see this. Whereas a man will come in and he'll have like 2 of them, and he'll be like, I'm a perfect fit, here we go. And so, I've always had a challenge with that too. I fight against it in myself. And so this is around an awareness that if that's your tendency, you gotta just go for it, and what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You'll get rejected, or you say, no, I don't have those, but I can learn them, no problem, right? Just take some risk and push yourself is one piece of advice that I would have. Also in the notion of self-promotion, women often have this tendency, it's actually a Canadian thing as well, so you're a Canadian woman, then you're really humble. And I work at a US firm now, and so I've really got to get over the humbleness thing that we've got. But it's around promoting yourself in a way that feels authentic. So being clear about your aspirations and ideas, making sure that your LinkedIn profile adequately and properly reflects who you are and the brand that you want to represent. When there's a meeting in a room, making sure that you sit right at the table, not standing around. Like, take that seat at the table. You belong there, right? Seek feedback. Don't be afraid of feedback. It's not a judgment of you. You get feedback, and it can be very constructive, and then you can do better and better. So that's around self-promotion. The second one is sponsorship. And this goes back to our natural way of affiliating ourselves with those with whom we feel comfortable. And so this is again where, so if you've got the dominant group, and there's a dominant group in society, right? And here's the dominant group here, and I'm not part of the dominant group. Naturally, our connectivity is not going to be as strong as if I was a younger person who's naturally part of the dominant group. We speak the same speak. We understand how to relate to each other. So I think that building networks, mentorship, and sponsorship, until we've got a world where we do have that parity at the senior levels and all the way down, we do need to work on it, and we do need to be focused on creating those connections, because they don't happen as naturally as they do when the junior person is part of the dominant group, if you will. I've been fortunate in my career. I would not have advanced the way that I did in my career if there weren't people in my life and through my professional life who took a personal and professional interest in my professional success. And so without that, I would say it would be extremely difficult for people to get ahead. You know, even as an entrepreneur, somebody needs to take an interest in your professional success. Somebody needs to give you the funding. Somebody needs to take that chance on you and be your voice and say to other investors, this is a good investment to make, right? Or in the corporate organization landscape, they're at that table where promotions are being discussed or job opportunities, and they say, you know, Marcia's terrific, we should put her in that role, for example. And that's what sponsorship is. So a lot of what I do when talking to people is talk to them about how to cultivate that sponsorship, because it's around building relationships, people seeing you in action and working with those people, and then being open about what your aspirations are. And when you find that connection, asking for the help, asking for the role, and letting that person know about your interests so that they can be your voice at the table. And then the final piece is around networking, which many people think of as a dirty word, right? Because networking, it feels so false. You know, I'm going to go to the cocktail event and grab a bunch of business cards and then send it through LinkedIn requests and that kind of thing. I don't think of networking that way. I think of it as relationship building. And the more relationships that you build, the more, and good solid relationships, and that's about the reciprocity that's inherent in a relationship. Success is, a lot of people's success comes through the strengths of the relationships that they've built over the years. And then magical things happen over the years when you've got this network of interesting relationships, people who you've gotten to know over the years, and you can match them up across your network and make great things happen. So I always encourage people to build those relationships. Women excel at building relationships. And so I think if we all think of it as building relationships and taking an interest in other people as opposed to networking, it becomes a lot easier. So my final comment is just really for everyone, and being International Women's Day for women, believe in yourself, push yourself. Don't worry about failure. The worst thing that you do, you know, you stumble, you fall flat on your face, you can probably get yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And I think that the most successful people in life and in business have been people who have experienced multiple failures and developed that resilience to get back up and learn from their experiences. Thank you.